Welcome back. This is now the next day for me. So this is part 2. We're going to pick it up without any pontificating. We're going to pick it up where we left off, which was right here at the break. I'm hoping that you're getting the sense that this is a real conversation. There's no question about it to me. And it has to do with the interaction between the participants. It's an amazing document. It probably isn't getting as much traction as you would imagine due to the fact that no one is really confident in their ability to discern whether something is real or not. I am, and I have a supernatural power. That's what it is. Yeah, that's the ticket. But anyway, so we're in the middle of this briefing with President Reagan and William Casey, I think CIA director at the time, was holding the meeting, and present are also the caretaker, who is doing most of the talking, and a couple of advisors, and also the transcriber, who is recording the conversation and later made this text that we're reading here from that recording. So the president says, "Well, that is a lot to digest. I have written down many questions, but let's take a break and come back to this." President. They take their break, and President picks up. "I think we can continue now." Caretaker. "Thank you, Mr. President. I will continue. In the 1976 MJ-12 report, it was estimated that the aliens' technology was many thousands of years ahead of ours. Our scientists speculated that until our technology develops to a level equal to the aliens, we cannot understand the large volume of scientific information we have gained from the aliens' craft. The advancement of our technology may take hundreds of years. During our initial program to study the alien spaceship, we started many different projects. The first project, originally established in 1949, was to collect and evaluate medical information from the surviving alien creature, EBA-1, and the recovered alien bodies. This project medically examined EBA-1 and provided our medical researchers with many answers to the evolution theories. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? The next project, originally established as part of Project Gleam in 1954, that's the secret project, became a separate project in 1966. Its mission was to establish communication with aliens. This project met with positive success and will be discussed later under a different level. Two other projects involved the test flying of an alien ship and the cross-technology between our space program, and the information we obtained from EBA-1. Casey. Now, Mr. President, we can move on to questions or a different level. Which do you prefer? President. Well, I have a lot of questions, so let me ask a few and then we can move on. I guess the first question I have is their lifespan. How old is EBA-1? Caretaker. Mr. President, the alien civilization that EBA came from is what we call the Eben Society. It wasn't a name they gave us, it was a name we chose. Their lifespan is between 350 to 400 years, but that is Earth years. President. Is time the same on their planet as on ours? Caretaker. No, Mr. President, time is very different on the Eben planet, which, by the way, we call Serpo. Interesting. Their day is approximately 40 hours. That is measured by the movement of their two suns. The solar system containing Serpo is a binary star system, or two suns, rather than one like our solar system. President. Oh, well, your answer creates more questions. Okay, as I understand it, their planet has two suns. Wouldn't that mean the planet was hot? I guess that explains their eyes having two eyelids. Caretaker. Yes, Mr. President, their suns do not set like ours. There is daylight during the entire day with the exception of a short time period where both suns hit the horizon. Wow, that's pretty detailed information. President, what is life like on Serpico? And it's actually Serpo, but he called it Serpico. That's from the movie, right? Caretaker. Mr. President, it's called Serpo, spelled Serpo. I think that will have to be given in a different level of briefings. Mr. Director? Casey. Yes, Mr. President, I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves. We have all that information about the visitor's planet, but we would have to present that information in a different briefing. President. Okay, all these levels. Something I guess I'll have to, I'll have to get used to it. Does all classified information have these different levels? Casey. Well, it is similar to the SIOP briefing you were given in January. We have different levels of clearances and President. No, I understand all that, Bill. I fully understand the different levels of clearance. I mean, what about the Soviets? What about the spy operations we have in Russia? Comparing the two, this alien information to that, are they on the same level? Casey. No, Mr. President. This information would be considered at the very top, whereas our spying operation inside Russia would be considered at a parallel level, but not the same. President. Like apples and oranges. Okay, I see. I guess this is more than can be explained in one sitting. What about the travel from Serpo to Earth? Caretaker. Well, Mr. President, the distance from Earth to Serpo is about 40 light years. They can travel that in about 9 of our months. I am no scientist, but as I mentioned earlier, they can travel that great distance by means of space tunnels. They seem to be able to bend the distance from one point in space to another. Just how they do this must be explained scientifically. I think Bob Lazar did a very good job of explaining it. It's not a difficult concept, but I won't go into it here. Certainly something that you would understand if I explained it to you. And I have in previous videos, but that's neither here nor there. President. Okay, well, very interesting. Are the laws of physics on their planet the same as our planet? Caretaker. Not exactly. There seem to be a little different laws, especially when it comes to the movement of their planet in relationship to their two suns. Our scientists don't understand it because it defies some of our laws of physics. President. Do they use nuclear power, or what type of power do they have in those ships? Caretaker. Mr. President, we understand very little about their propulsion system. There seems to be two different propulsion systems. One they use within our atmosphere, and one they use when they exit our atmosphere. They do not have nuclear power. Their propulsion system does have some sort of low-level radiation emissions, but nothing that would endanger us. Important point there. It isn't like our radiation, but we call it radiation because we have nothing else to compare it with. President. Have these aliens visited other places on Earth? Caretaker. Again, Mr. President, that would be in a different level of discussion. President. I'm getting tired of hearing that answer, but I understand. Casey. Mr. President, the Soviet Union has had their contacts with these aliens. We have a great deal of intelligence that would indicate the Soviets had their Roswell, so to speak. What they know is about the same as we know. They had some bodies back in the late 50s, but our intelligence would indicate the species of aliens were different. President. Okay, well then, Bill, that presents a very disturbing feeling for me. Are you telling me that there are different races or species, as you said, visiting Earth at the same time? Caretaker. Casey. Caretaker, take that question. Caretaker. Yes, Mr. President, I hesitate to state the reason. We should have that discussion in a different meeting. President. Just answer the simple question of how many different species. Don't go into details, since I'm sure that's at a different level, as I've been hearing all morning. Caretaker. I am sorry, Mr. President, if I upset you. No, Caretaker, don't feel that way. I'm not upset. You are all of my advisors. As president, I must listen to you and take your advice. I'm not upset. I'm sorry for giving you that impression. Can you tell me how many different species have visited us? Caretaker. Mr. Director? Casey. Go ahead, Caretaker. Answer the President's question. Caretaker. At least 5. President. Are they all friendly? Caretaker. Mr. Director? Casey. Advisor number 1, would you like to step in here? Advisor number 1. Mr. President, that is a very difficult question to answer. There are many parameters that we follow to evaluate the threat. However, we have little intelligence on 4 of the 5. We have plenty of intel on the EBINs. They've given us everything we've asked for. And they have also helped us to understand the other 4 species. I'm afraid to say, Mr. President, and please don't misunderstand my words, but we think one of the species is very hostile. Casey. Mr. President, do you wish for us to continue on this track, or would you like something more private as to the discussion of this topic? President. For Christ's sakes, I'm the President of the United States. I should know if we're endangered by some threat from outer space. If you have something to say about a threat posed by this one species of alien, then I want to hear it. Casey. Mr. President, we have intelligence that would indicate this one species of aliens have abducted people from Earth. They have performed scientific and medical tests on these humans. To the best of our knowledge, no humans have been killed. But as advisor number 1 stated, the intelligence is from witnesses, and we haven't thoroughly evaluated this intelligence. We have captured one of these hostile aliens. This gets into some very, very sensitive information areas, Mr. President. I strongly suggest we end this discussion and move on to any further questions you might have and then get back to this. I don't think we are prepared to provide you with accurate answers to your questions about the potentially hostile aliens at this time. President. Okay, but expect this to be given to me as soon as possible. I want to know everything about these hostile creatures. We should start forming policies on how to deal with them. Advisor number 1, do you have operational war plans on this? Advisor number 1, yes, Mr. President, we have war plans on all potential threats to our country. President, please let us not forget the world. If these creatures attack some other country, we would have to help. Advisor number 1, Mr. President, we have absolutely no evidence that this particular alien race has any plans to attack the United States of America or planet Earth. President, I guess we really got off the original subject, but I want to know of any threats. Don't hide anything from me. Is that understood? Casey. Yes, sir. Advisor number one. Yes, sir, Mr. President. We will never hide information about a potential threat to our country or the world. You receive daily intel briefings, and you will continue to, and we can update that briefing with any potential threat from this area. President. Okay, let us continue. How many other presidents received this briefing? The caretaker. Mr. President, I have briefed President Nixon, Ford, and you. President Carter was never given the entire briefing. So there you go. As you know, in my previous video, I said that I don't believe Carter was told anything. I think that's a big rumor intended to fearmonger about Carter crying, So let me repeat that. Mr. President, I have briefed President Nixon, Ford, and you. President Carter was never given the entire briefing. I have no answer as to why he wasn't given the briefing. President. Well, knowing that by that guy, he probably couldn't understand it being from Georgia. But this is just a dry joke. It's ironic because actually Carter had seen a UFO, and I don't think Reagan had. So Carter actually knew more about it in that sense than Reagan did. But you see the polarity here. One is Republican, one's Democrat, and so. But the other thing I wanted to mention before we move on to the next page is that the one hostile species that they're talking about, they're designating them as hostile because they have abducted humans, and all of their information about that came from the actual abductees themselves, which is very interesting because I don't remember any discussion of abductees talking to the government about their experience. So this is something that was kept under wraps, and these people were probably sworn to secrecy. It's kind of sad. And I guess the other thing that I'm wondering is, given the fact that they took aggressive action like this, the Greys abducting people, I think that is what led to their their belief that maybe these were hostile, because they were actually doing something that looks like it was not with our consent, and so they called them hostile. I think what we're learning now is that although Twitter is completely divided on this, the UFO Twitter group, half of them think that the Greys are evil, and the other half think that if they were evil, they would have done something by now. So they're up to something. We don't know what it is. Well, we do kind of know what the Greys are up to, right? They're creating alien-human hybrids. But for what reason? And there's been reasons floated. One reason would be that they are one reason suggested by Dan Burish, who worked with J-Rod, who was an alien at Area 51. J-Rod told him that his race was, and he was kind of a gray looking, told him that his race was suffering from some sort of neuropathy that was resulting from just eons of cloning. And they were in trouble, they were dying, and they need our genetic material to fix their own race. Is that creating hybrids? Is that how they're going to fix their race? And are the old original Greys going to die out and only the hybrids live? And then, I don't know. I just don't know. But the point is, I don't think that we necessarily all think of the Greys as evil or malevolent anymore, but their secrecy is grating on people, especially in Twitter. And they're taking this as a opportunity to point out that humans are getting taken against their will, and having horrifying experiments perpetrated upon them, painful, and then discarded, and they portray it as a really evil thing. But my thoughts are that whatever they're doing is going to be paid back to us as a race, and they have that capability. So I'm, best case scenario, what they're doing is going to be revealed soon. They're going to explain why they kept it secret, and they're going to tell us exactly what they've been doing. If they don't do that, then there really is no justice in the universe, and I'll have to reevaluate everything. But I don't think that's going to happen. So let's continue. So Carter was not briefed, at least not on the entire program, not even the entirety of this briefing that Reagan was getting. President, yeah, knowing that guy, right? That was his joke. On Carter, okay, advisor number one. Mr. President, I can give you some details of an incident that occurred inside the Soviet Union in 1970. Casey, do we want to go there? Advisor number 4. May I say something, Mr. Director? Casey, go ahead, advisor number 4. Step in. Advisor number 4. I think this particular incident inside the Soviet Union will give the president an example of what the world has and will experience in the future. There is no way we can control visitors from outer space from traveling to Earth and visiting our planet. Some astronomers find it difficult to believe that these aliens can find Earth. Yeah, that's the old canard, right? How could they have gotten here, and how did they find us? They're so far away, and it would take them thousands of years, et cetera, et cetera. We are on the outer reaches of our galaxy. Our sun is one of hundreds of thousands of such stars within our galactic neighborhood. But the Ebens found us. They found Earth. And we are not the only country on Earth that has been visited by the Ebens. Now, as for the other 4 species, we know they have visited us in the past and will visit us in the future. We are like a petri dish within the universe. We are a diverse planet. We must be very interesting to other extraterrestrials. I'm sure other intelligent life forms in the universe must have some sort of communications among the sentient life forms. Maybe they broadcasted that Earth has intelligent life. Maybe that is why we are being visited. Getting back to advisor number 1, regarding the incident inside the Soviet Union, Mr. President, there are many such sightings all over the world. We must understand that the visitors can roam our planet at will without us doing much about it. However, I personally believe that we must prepare for the eventual day when some hostile life form decides to take over our planet. We must be prepared. I hope you understand why I said that, Mr. President. Yes, indeed, advisor number 4, very well said. I agree with you. I guess all of those sightings, well, some of them are real. I mean, we are being visited today, now, in this time period, Casey. Yes, Mr. President, we are. President, okay, advisor number 1, please continue. We cut you off, advisor number 1. Okay, thanks, Mr. President. As I was saying, actually a series of incidents occurred over about a week. Our intelligence gathering stations inside and outside of the Soviet Union lost my place as soon as I turned my eyes away. Our intelligence gathering stations inside and outside of the Soviet Union, picked up voice transmissions between Soviet air defense pilots and ground controllers regarding a number of UFOs which were being chased by Soviet pilots. The incident started in central Siberia and ended over the Black Sea. Literally thousands of Soviets observed the UFOs, and at least 20 different fighter pilots chased the UFOs. The Soviets attempted on two occasions to shoot down the UFOs, but to no avail. That is probably the best evidence that these things are happening over the Soviet Union. We think these UFOs were the hostile ones. We call them hostile because they tend to land, take humans, conduct experiments on them, and then release the humans. Their spacecraft are different in design from the EBINs. President. Wait a minute. Advisor number one, you mean to say that we have one of their spaceships? Are you telling me we have some other evidence of their spaceships? Advisor number one. Mr. President, we have photographs of their ships. This gets a little complicated because some of our intelligence comes from the EBINs. President. You mean from the EBA guy? Advisor number one. Yes, but from other sources of information connected to the EBINs. Casey. Mr. President, we'll have to go to those dreaded words you don't like. Higher levels, if you wish. President. No. Oh, okay. Just give me the briefing first. We can schedule the higher ones later. Advisor number one. Simply speaking, we know the difference between the EBIN spacecraft and the hostile aliens spacecraft. President. Do you have a name for them? I mean, the bad ones? Caretaker. May I interrupt, Mr. President? Casey. Wait, okay, I guess we can proceed. President. Well, Caretaker. Casey. Yes, go ahead, Caretaker. President. No, I didn't mean to interrupt. Caretaker. Thank you, Mr. President. We call the hostile aliens simply that, HAV, meaning hostile alien visitors. MJ-12 placed that code on them back in the 50s. Casey. Okay, we opened the box, so let's just tell the president what we know about the others. Advisor number one. The names? What? Several sentences not understood. Okay, well, technical or what? Casey. Well, okay, I guess it means the technical stuff. President. You mean to say these HAVs have been visiting us and kidnapping our people since the 50s? Caretaker. Mr. President, yes. Well, they have been around since then. Director Casey? Casey. Mr. President, we have some indication that they might have been doing this for some time, but we really have to consider all of the evidence listed in our reports and compare that to some of the open source information. There are always humans that will exaggerate and tell lies compared to the real ones, or the ones who were abducted and subjected to experiments. We have to sort through the differences and place some aside and look at the real evidence of abductions. But we can be sure that the EBINs have never done this. They are extremely peaceful and would not harm a living soul, including animals. Advisor number one. I suggest we go ahead and give the president the information on them. Advisor number four. I agree. Casey. Okay, give the president the names, Caretaker. Caretaker. Names, the technical names? Casey. Yes, okay. Well, I can live with that, but we have to be real sure that this information stays here. We cannot allow this to flow from Caretaker. Okay, thank you, Mr. President. The 5 species are called EBINs, archeloids, quadloids, hepaloids, trantiloids, and trantiloids. By the way, I just have to mention that the oid comes from our word humanoid, right? So humanoid is a word that means after the fashion of humans. So these, I don't know if all of these species are, I'm just saying grammatically the oid is related to the oid in humanoid, but I'm not sure where they got the rest of the designations here. These are our names for these things, I think. Yeah, they would have to be. These names were given to the aliens species by the intelligence community. Yeah, specifically MJ5. What the hell is MJ5? The Ebens are friendly. The trantiloids are the dangerous ones. I'm going to assume that's the Greys because they're the ones that are abducting people. President. My God, just knowing we have names for these things are amazing. Which one did we capture, Casey? Mr. President, we have a trantiloid, but it is dead. We captured it in 1961 in Canada, and we had it in captivity until 1962 when it died. We'll show you a photograph. Caretaker? Caretaker. Director, I don't have one with me, but I will get one couried over to us. Casey. Mr. President, we can provide that during our next meeting regarding this subject. President, okay. Casey. The part of the story but we can look back. President, okay, let's continue. Caretaker. Mr. President, getting back to my presentation, all of our collected information is safely contained in a number of locations. President, don't tell me where. I don't want to know specific locations. I'll let or leave that up to you and the caretakers of the material. I don't want to be in a position to know this. Maybe I will later. Caretaker. Okay, Mr. President, I'll keep this in general terms. I just want to assure you that all of the information is safely tucked away at secure locations, including the devices and flying craft that we have. Ba-boom. President, may I assume one of these places is located in California? Caretaker. Some of the items are tested at Livermore and flown around Edwards, but they are kept in Nevada, Area 51. President. Okay, yes, I was briefed on sensitive military installations back in February. West of Las Vegas, I guess. Caretaker. Yes, Mr. President. We call it the Groom Lake Complex. President. Okay, I was told about that. The same place we have Soviet fighter jets. Caretaker. Yes, Mr. President, that same place. May I continue? President. Yes, by all means do. Caretaker. In order to protect all of this information and the fact that the United States government has evidence of our planet being visited by extraterrestrials, we developed over the years a very effective program to safeguard the information. We call it Project Dove. It is a complex series of disinformation operations by our military intelligence agencies to disinform the public. As you know, Mr. President, we have some highly classified aircraft. In order to keep these aircraft secret, we tend to convince at times the public and press that maybe UFOs are real in order to make the public think what they are seeing are actually UFOs instead of our own secret aircraft, even though we know maybe some of the sightings are of actual UFOs. As I said before, this is complicated, but it is a form of counterintelligence. We give the public some actual facts and let them run with it. The rest is taken care of by them. If you consider the first person who helped us with this disinformation program, Mr. George Adamski, back in the early 50s, and up to all of the movie productions of UFO-related movies. This helps the public to keep their minds open, but also allows us to keep our secret aircraft away from the public's knowledge. That includes some of the craft that were lent to us by the Ebens. So the Ebens lent us some craft. That's new. President, I always knew there was some form of cooperation between our government and the motion picture industry. I heard rumors over the years, even during my acting days. Caretaker, well, Mr. President, the first cooperative venture was the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. That was a cooperative venture with the United States Air Force and the movie industry. President, that movie, Close Encounters, was that one of them? I guess no Bonzo movies were ever involved. Loud laughter heard. Casey, no. Mr. President, I don't think, or should I say, I didn't think Bonzo came from outer space. President, no, but some people could imagine it. Caretaker, yes, Mr. President, we provided the basic subject matter for that movie. President, was it based on a real incident? Mr. President, Casey goes, Mr. President, okay, Bill, I know what's coming. Just forget my question for now. Casey, okay. Caretaker, continue. Caretaker, thank you, Mr. President. In 1949, President Truman created 2 secret commissions. These commissions were to meet privately without recording any contents. The commissions were codenamed Adam and Eve. The first commission, Adam, was to study the idea of releasing some information to the public regarding our actual knowledge of UFOs and the 2 crash incidents. The findings of the Adam Commission consisted of the following statement. In this matter, public opinion must be recognized as a factor of considerable importance, even if clearly affirmative, might have the effect of placing before the American people a moral question of vital historical significance at a time when the full security impact of the question had not become apparent. If this decision is to be made by the American people, it should be made in the circumstances of an actual disclosure of the existence of space beings who had visited Earth. In other words, the American public might hesitate to believe the existence of space beings unless the American government showed proof. Well, that was very smart of him to say, because that's exactly what's happening today. Until the government says they're real, most of the public doesn't even track the story at all and still considers any talk of UFOs completely fringe and irrelevant and stupid. So, and that's thanks to your government, who proudly engineered ways to lie to us and obfuscate the truth, right? And they don't even show any remorse in back then, because it was all justified by war. There was an actual quote from the classified document dated 1 December 1949. The Second Commission, Eve, concerned the use of, this wasn't, I'm sorry. So, trying to figure out where the quotation starts. Yeah, there's a close quote, but there's no opening quote. But this statement up here about Americans wouldn't believe in space beings unless the government showed proof. This was an actual quote from the classified document dated 1 December 1949. The Second Commission, Eve, concerned the use of atom bombs to repel a space alien attack. What's interesting in this statement was the decision by President Truman to protect at a record pace on the production of atomic to proceed at a record pace on the production of atomic weapons that could be released in space. The Commission predicted it would take the United States 10 years to develop such a delivery system. President Truman wanted it in 5 years. In fact, in 1959, the first Atlas ICBMs were targeted for deep space. SIOP plans were developed to counter any space-based alien invasion. Mr. David Lilienthal, the first Atomic Energy Commission chairman, was in charge of the production of enough atomic weapons to counter any anticipated alien threat. The commission was tasked with developing a delivery system that could send a Mark III atomic weapon into space. In the 1948 to 49 timeframes, there were fewer than 50 atomic bombs in the arsenal, and none of these were assembled. The Mark III plutonium bombs, like the one dropped at Nagasaki, Japan, took 39 men more than 2 days to assemble the bomb. The bombs were so large and heavy, each weighed 10,000 pounds, and that a delivery system must be capable of sending this heavy weapon into space. As a result of Eve's commission findings, atomic weapons production was increased at a record pace. This is something the American public was never told, that they were ramping up their nuclear missile arsenal, at least a portion of it, specifically to protect against an alien invasion. And the fuckers never told us that. And we just allowed it. We just assumed, we have to build all these weapons, and I don't even think they reported to the American public on just how many bombs we had until later. It's just unbelievable that how much power we let them operate with without oversight, which led to the disastrous problem we have today. Of course, this buildup coincided with the Soviet Union's buildup. It was easy to convince the American public that our buildup was caused by the Soviet Union's buildup. Well, there you go. Easy. Mr. President, in 1964, we were able to have our very first controlled encounter with the Ebens. Let me give you the background. Eba was a mechanic, not a scientist. He was still able to teach us some of the Eben language. Their language was very difficult for our linguists to learn because it consisted of tones, not words. However, we were able to translate some basic words. Eba showed us their communications device. It was a strange-looking device that had 3 parts. Once assembled, the device sent out signals, something like our Morse code system. Although there was a problem. During the crash in 1947, one part of this communication system was broken. Eba was unable to repair it until our scientists found some items that could be used in place of the broken parts. Once the communication device was repaired, Eba sent our messages. We had to trust Eba as to the contents of those messages. You can imagine what some of our military commanders thought of this. Eba could be sending out a distress call that could result in some invasion, but that, of course, never happened. Eba continued to send messages until his death. But once he died, then we were on our own. We were able to crudely operate the device. We sent out several messages out over a 6-month period, 1953. But we did not receive any return messages. President, excuse me, did Eba receive any return messages? Caretaker, getting back to the messages, Mr. President. Iba sent out 6 messages, one letting his home planet know that he was alive and his comrades were dead, another explaining the 2 crashes. The 3rd message was a request to be rescued. The 4th was a message suggesting a meeting between his leaders and our leaders. And the last message, some form of exchange program. Casey. Mr. President, we'll go into that later, President. What? The exchange program? Casey. Yes, Mr. President. We can give you another couple hours on that subject. President. We had one? Casey. Can I speak to you privately, please, Mr. President? President. Okay, yes. You mean now? Casey. Well, let us put this one on the back burner and go on with the remainder of this briefing. President. Okay. Caretaker. Mr. President, we don't think he did, but we could not be entirely certain. Did what? I have to go back and get the context on that. Oh, the exchange program. Yeah. Did we have one? And the answer is, well, still doesn't make sense. We don't think he did, but we could not be entirely certain. But our scientists fine-tuned our efforts over the next 18 months and finally sent 2 messages in 1955 that were received. We received the reply. We were able to translate about 30% of that message. We turned to several linguistic specialists from several different universities and even several from foreign universities. Finally, we were able to translate most of the messages. We decided to reply in English and see if the Ebens could translate our language easier than we could translate theirs. Likely. What did the President, what did the messages say? The one we received from the Ebens? So I guess they didn't get the messages sent by Eba, or did it take that long to respond? Oh, yes, Eba died before we got those messages. Never mind. Caretaker. Mr. President, the first message we received acknowledged our message and asked questions about the crew of the 2 missing craft. It also gave a series of numbers that we think were some type of coordinates. President. Okay, so they wanted to know the coordinates of the crash sites on Earth? I'm sure they wanted to know about their crew. Did we tell them all but one was dead? No, wait, I'm sure when Eba sent his message, that is probably the first thing he sent. Was Eba a military person or what? Caretaker. Mr. President, we believe Eba was a member of their Air Force, or maybe something like NASA. President. Okay, please continue. Caretaker. Thank you, Mr. President. Finally, we were able to translate most of the messages. As I said, we decided to respond in English. Approximately 4 months later, we received a reply in broken English. Very nice. Sentences contained nouns and adjectives, but no verbs. It took us several months to translate the message. We then sent even our typed English lessons in a series of one-sheet formats. Without going into the technical description of the Eben communications device, it was like a television screen and a keypad, but the pad contained several different Eben characters depending on the number of times you held down one key. We were able to transpose our English-typed words into the second part of the device, which was similar to our facsimile transmission system. It took our scientists some time to perfect this, but it worked. 6 months later, we received another English message. This time, it was clearer, but not clear enough. Ebens were confusing several different English words and still failed to complete a proper sentence. President. Gee, I do that all the time. I just cannot imagine how an alien race could view our language. We have thousands of different languages on Earth, and they probably just have one on their Serpo planet. That is truly amazing. Caretaker. Yes, Mr. President, I cannot imagine living on a planet with just one language. But we were able to provide the basic skill level for them to communicate in English. It took time, but they realized our efforts. In one message, they provided us with a form of the Eben alphabet with the equivalent English letter. Our linguists had a very difficult time figuring this out. The written Eben language was simple characters and symbols, but our linguistics had a difficult time comparing the two written languages. Over the next 5 years, we were able to perfect our understanding of the Eben language somewhat, and the Ebens were able to better understand English. However, we had a major problem. Trying to coordinate a date, time, and location for an Eben landing on Earth. Even though we could basically understand some Eben, and the Ebens could understand some English, we could not understand their time and date system, and they could not understand ours. We sent them Earth's rotation, schedule, revolution, date system, etc. For some reason, the Ebens never understood this. Maybe they just didn't want to come. In return, the Ebens sent us their system, which was difficult for our scientists to understand because we had no reference to their planet. The Ebens did not explain any astronomical data of Serpo or their system. We then decided to just send pictures showing showing Earth, landmarks, and a simple numbering system for time periods. We had many problems trying to send pictures using their facsimile system. We couldn't be sure that they were receiving what we sent. We had a lot of trial and errors in doing this. We received some strange messages from the Ebens, basically big question marks regarding what we sent them as to the pictures. We then decided on narrowing any future landing location for them to the location of their crash in New Mexico. We concluded they must have that location. We are sure Ebe sent that to his home planet prior to his death. We did find some star charts, well, as we call them, in both crashed spacecraft. They were difficult to understand because they were on a block that we later figured out went into a certain panel on the crashed craft's instruments. Once the panel was in place, the board showed a star system. In fact, we were able to fit all the found boards into the panel and view many different star systems. We then put to work our astronomers in deciphering the star systems. It didn't take them very long to determine the various star systems. We also found several strange spots on their star charts. We concluded these spots were where the travel space tunnels that Ebe described were located. Our astronomers compared the different star charts and found out they were not consecutive, meaning that one star chart was from one part of the universe and the next was a chart closer to their home system. Our scientists concluded the spots on the chart were a form of shortcuts from one point of space to another. Some of the top stargates, then, in other words, some of our top astronomers were briefed into the program in order to study the charts. I'm sure they were given only the minimum amount of information they needed, something like a need-to-know program. President. Okay, that's a lot to absorb. Wow. Well, I have many questions, but I guess I'll just wait now. I have something to attend to now, but let us take a short break and come back to this. Casey. Mr. President, how much time do you have left? President. Well, Bill, let me check. Pause. I need to call some people on another matter. Give me about 15 minutes. Is that okay? Casey. Yes, Mr. President. We are here at your disposal. President. I have listened very briefly, very intently to this briefing. I have many questions which I realize traverses several different layers of secrecy. I don't want to mix up the different layers, but I can see how government bureaucracy exists. This is one thing I can probably change as president. Bill, let's go to the next layer. Casey. Mr. President, do you want the same people involved? President. Yes. Let's just continue. Casey. Okay, caretaker, take over. Caretaker. Thank you. When Eba was alive, he showed us two devices. One was a communication system, and one was an energy device. The communication system did not work without the energy device. Eventually, a scientist from Los Alamos figured out the two systems and connected them. After Eba died, we were able to send transmissions, as I said earlier. Eba built up a strong friendship with a U.S. Army major who was his guardian. Just wondering if that was Dan Boorish. The two of them decided that one of Eben's first messages of the 5 cent was a request for an exchange program between Eben's and our military personnel. Interesting. So military personnel. And I think all those personnel that in Close Encounters of the Third Kind that came back, they were all military. Remember, I mentioned 6 messages. The 6th consisted of landing coordinates for Earth. That information wasn't clearly documented back then. We are not sure of the exact chain of events between Eba and the Major. As I said earlier, we were able to eventually communicate with the Ebens. Over a period of a few years, we could send and receive information. We finally received a startling message from the Ebens. They wanted to visit Earth, retrieve their spacemen bodies, and meet with Earthlings. They provided a time, date, and location. We figured that the Ebens were continually visiting Earth and had probably mapped it. However, the date was about 8 years in the future. Our military figured something was wrong, and that maybe the Ebens were confusing Earth time with Eben time. After a long series of messages, it was determined the Ebens would land on Earth on Friday, April 24th, 1964. President. Just how did we figure the date? Caretaker. Mr. President, these messages occurred over a period of several years. By this time, we both had a working knowledge of each other's seasons, which was based on the Earth's rotation, which also figured into our time periods. We had a working knowledge of their 40-hour days. They were a little smarter than us, being able to comprehend our language and our time periods. President, okay, that makes sense, but about the aliens. Caretaker, Mr. President, we did have a basic understanding of their language. We could understand basic words and symbols. They understood more of our language than we did theirs. President, okay, then what happened? Caretaker, well, Casey. Mr. President, this is where things get very interesting. President, okay, I'm waiting. Caretaker. Our government, specifically MJ-12, met in secret to plan the event. Decisions were made, then changed many times. We had just about 25 months from the time we finally received their message of the data to prepare for their arrival. Several months into the planning, President Kennedy decided to approve a plan to exchange a special military team. The USAF was tasked as the lead agency. The USAF officials picked special civilian scientists to assist in the planning and crew selection. And I must pause. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. The U.S. officials, Air Force officials, picked up civilian scientists to assist in the planning and crew selection. The team members' selection process was the hardest to accomplish. What the hell is that? I think that came from my iPad, sorry. I don't know. Was it this link? No. Okay, so let's back up here. The selection was the hardest to accomplish. Several plans were suggested and then changed. It took months for the planners to decide on the selection criteria for each team member. They decided that each member must be military, single, no children, and a career member. They had to be trained in different skills. Casey, caretaker, let's just go into the general stuff here. I don't think the president wants to know every single minute detail. President, well, if I had the time, I would, but I understand that. Caretaker, Mr. President, a team of 12 men were selected. However, during this time period, President Kennedy died. The nation was shocked, as you know. President, yes, everyone was shocked. I can understand that. I can understand what must have happened during the project when John died. Caretaker. President Johnson continued the program. When it came time for the meeting, we were ready. The landing occurred in New Mexico. We had everything prepared. We had a hoax landing location just in case it was leaked. The landing occurred and we greeted the Ebens. However, a mix-up happened. They were not prepared to accept our exchange personnel. Everything was placed on hold. Finally, in 1965, the Ebens landed in Nevada, and we exchanged 12 of our men for one of theirs. President, one? Why just one? Casey, Mr. President, this wasn't clearly documented in the reports that we read. President, one. Was this their ambassador? Casey, well, something like that. We just called it EBA 2. We'll discuss that later. Caretaker. Mr. President, our team of 12 went to the Eben planet for 13 years. The original mission called for a 10-year stay. However, because of the strange time periods on their planet, the team stayed 3 additional years. 8 returned in 1978, 2 died on the planet, and 2 decided to stay. I love that. Wow. President. Okay, this is amazing. I can see about that movie. The movie was based on a real event. I saw that movie. 12 Men Left, along with Richard Dreyfuss. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Mr. Casey. Mr. President, yes, the movie was similar to the real event, at least the last part of the movie. President. Okay, a lot to digest. I want to hear about the hostile ones. Advisor number 1. Mr. President, may I step in here? President. By all means, Advisor number 1, do. Advisor number 1. Well, Mr. President, the hostile alien species is responsible for abducting some humans. We can clearly prove some 80 Americans were abducted from about 1955 until the present. The last known one in July of last year, 1980. And that is kind of where I remember it started dropping off, the abductions. Anyway, we have a special military intelligence unit keeping track of these abductions. We have FBI agents attached to assist us when needed. We have NSA and, in some instances, CIA personnel helping. Unfortunately, we don't have the technology to know when these hostiles will abduct. We get the information afterwards. We interview the victim and place them under hypnotic trances. Some of the victims remember the entire event without hypnosis, while others needed hypnosis to relate what happened. We haven't found one single death directly related to the hostile aliens. We have had deaths that were attributed to the abductions, suicides. We recorded 5 of them. So sad. Because those suicides, those were the result of human stigmatization, the government's stigmatization of the subject. They would never have killed themselves just from having the experience. That's my opinion, okay? But, Mr. President, these are the abductions we know about. We have no idea how many other abductions are occurring in this country or around the world. These hostile aliens are pretty sneaky. They seem to appear and disappear, which is beyond our technical understanding. They also seem to float or defy gravity. We have actual photographs of them doing this. God damn it. It just pisses me off, man. That they have the hubris to hide this for all these years, claiming to this very day we have no evidence of extraterrestrials. Oh. Okay. Deep cleansing breath. We have a classic abduction incident that was recorded by military intelligence personnel. It happened in 1979 near a military base. President, where? Advisor number 1. In New Mexico. President, what's with New Mexico? The aliens seem to like that state. Do we know why? Caretaker, excuse me, may I speak? President, yes, caretaker, step in. Caretaker, New Mexico is similar to the home planet of the Ebens, since we do not know which planet the Trantiloids come from. Casey, wait, advisor number 4? Advisor number 4, I think we do. I think the Ebens gave us that information. We know the star group. It is close to our solar system. Well, I mean, in astronomical terms, maybe 20 to 25 light years away. They are actually closer to us than the Ebens are. Victor. Who's Victor? I have no idea. The homeworld of the HAV, the Trantiloids, is the 3rd planet out from the star Epsilon Eridani in the constellation Eridanus at 10.5 light years away. Although somewhat cooler and fainter than our sun, it is very similar. Hal's friend, advisor number 4, was mistaken on the distance, an easy error to make given the voluminous amount of information on this subject matter alone. Nearby star Epsilon Eridani has an Earth-like planet. Is this the homeworld of the hostile ET species, the Trantiloids? Explanation. Epsilon Eridani is located in the Celestial River, where it flows south to Achernar. It is fully visible to almost all of the southern hemisphere and half of the northern. A planet has been found orbiting a sun-like star only 10.5 light years away with a magnitude of 3.7. No direct picture of the planet was taken. The planet was discovered by the gravitational wobble it created on its parent star, Epsilon Eridani. The discovery marks the closest naked-eye sun-like star yet found to house an extrasolar planet. Pictured below the epsilon, blah, 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 not important. President. So that means they can travel like the Ebens travel. I mean, using those black holes or whatever you call them. So he's, just a reminder, what we're talking about is we're comparing the Ebens to the hostile ones, which are, I think, the Trantiloids, and those are probably the grays. And they're comparing, like, do they travel just like the Ebens travel? I mean, using those black holes or whatever you call them, advisor number 4. Yes, Mr. President, they can travel in the same fashion as the Ebens. However, according to the Ebens, the Trantiloids use a different form of propulsion. Something like matter versus antimatter, President. And that means, advisor number 4, Mr. President, basic physics, Casey. Mr. President, do you want to go into the physics of this? President. Oh, no, I don't think I'd understand it. Advisor number 4. Oh, I was just going to say that we know that when matter is placed next to antimatter, there is a great deal of energy released. If one could harness that into a propulsion system, that would be great. But we don't have the capability to do that. I just should interject here that Bob Lazar's description of their reactor was very clear, and it was indeed a matter-antimatter situation. What they, in brief, I can actually explain it pretty easily. Element 15, which is the heavy element that is not native to Earth but is theoretically possible on the chart, was used for 2 purposes in their craft. It was the one purpose that I want to talk about right now is that it was being bombarded with a proton stream. And each time a proton would bombard element 115, element 115 would cough up an antiproton. And that antiproton was then mixed with a normal proton in the reaction chamber. And that explosion was, the protons were completely converted to energy. So this is much, much more powerful than fusion or fission, because this is complete transformation of matter to energy, equals mc squared. And then this explosion, just like we do with our, cylinders in our car where we have an explosion, and we transduce that explosion into movement of the piston, right? Well, in their case, what they're doing is they're taking that explosion and transducing it into electricity through a piezoelectric type conversion, transducer. So this explosion is converted to just electricity, but really, really powerful electricity, like a very high voltage and a high current. And that was then used to amplify the gravity waves that would bring that distant point in where they were wanting to go very close to them by bending space-time through the gravity effect. And that's how they could travel faster than the speed of light to an outside observer. But in their local realm, they're still not traveling faster than the speed of light. It's just that they've bent time to make the distance shorter. They bent space. So Bob Lazar is completely vindicated in all of this. And I've always believed the guy, but it's, half of, maybe a third of UFO Twitter still doesn't believe in him. So it's just really ridiculous and sad. Even after David Grush, there are still people that are questioning. Although I admit that they're starting to finally come around after Grush. That maybe Bob Lazar was telling the truth. It's funny because you still hear people saying, well, maybe he saw something, but I still don't believe him completely. Oh, come on, Jesus. Okay. President. Well, let's see. Where are we? He doesn't think he would understand the propulsion. I was just going to say we don't have the capability to do that antimatter type of thing. President. Do we have one of their spaceships? Caretaker. Well, yes, partially. A crashed one. President. Okay, can we or do we have the technical knowledge to understand it? No, Mr. President, Casey says. No, Mr. President, we don't. President, can we make atomic bombs, go to Mars? We can make atomic bombs, go to Mars, and we can't understand their science. Casey. Advisor number 4? Advisor number 4. Mr. President, their technology is probably 1,000 years more advanced than ours, maybe even more. They have different materials to work with. Some of their materials, some of their materials are not found on this planet. President, what do you mean, like iron or elements? Advisor number 4. Yes, Mr. President, we found many metals and other things that are not found on this planet. Maybe they have more than 104 elements. Or maybe they are different than ours. President. The hostile ones or the evens? Advisor number 4. Mr. President, that goes for each species, although the evens do have similar elements as those found on Earth. But the Trantiloids have strange materials, nothing like those found on Earth. These aliens can imitate humans. They can look like blonde humans. However, they are not blonde, but ugly-looking insects. President. Insects? Did you say that? Advisor number 4. Yes. Do you have a photograph? Caretaker. Yes, hold on. Casey. They are pretty nasty looking. President. Well, now this kind of breaks my theory, okay? Because I thought they were talking about the Greys, because the Greys are doing the abducting as far as I can tell. But now they're saying that these are insect-looking in their native appearance, but that they can imitate blonde humans. That would be the Nordic types, right? And I've never trusted the Nordics based on a single thing that I read from Dolores Cannon. They're the ones that look most like us. They're very beautiful. But this woman who Dolores had been regressing in a hypnotic, sort of a past life regression type of thing. She described being in Atlantis and seeing a bunch of these very beautiful people. They were they are human, but they were just off the chart in terms of their beauty. And she was very impressed and very kind of excited to see them walking towards her. But then as she continued to watch, they went to a Colosseum and, she said, uh-oh. And Dolores said, what do you mean? She goes, these people are not nice. They're not nice at all. And she described that in the Colosseum, that they were watching animals being tortured and killed, fights, going on like that, just really gruesome, bloody stuff, almost like dog fights. That was the impression I got. It was as ugly as a dog fight with a bunch of ugly humans standing around cheering it on. So that was her impression of these. She didn't say that they were Nordics, but she said that they were human-looking and gorgeous. So it just goes to show you can't judge a book by a cover. Maybe the insect ones are the friendliest of all, the praying mantis types, and maybe the Nordics are the most evil. You just have to judge a tree by its fruit, right? Okay. Casey, they are pretty nasty looking. President. Well, they would stand out. Advisor number 4. No, Mr. President, as I said, they can imitate looking like humans. President. Well, how in the world would they do that? It took a lot of makeup to make me look good in the movies. I love President Reagan in this briefing. He's just so cool. He really is that sweet old man that we wanted him to be in this briefing. Unfortunately, there was a lot of things about Reagan that were not good in terms of policy, but I like him here. President. They can be killed? Wait a minute, did I miss something? Yeah, advisor number 4. Well, Mr. President, I can assure you they don't use makeup, at least not like we would. They have the ability to change their bodies. As I said before, they are thousands of years ahead of us in technology and probably every other science. President. They can be killed? Advisor number 4. Yes, they are just flesh and blood, like a human body. They can be killed, but their spaceships have a force field around them. They can be shot down, but it takes some doing on our part. Casey. Mr. President, we have to use a small-style nuclear missile to shoot them down, but we haven't actually done that yet. We have experimented in Nevada on the captured craft we have of theirs. This would probably explain Bob Lazar said that one of the 9 saucers that he saw at S4 had a what looked like a missile hole blast going right through it, and it where it exited the metal was showing the path of the projectile that went through it. And so I'm wondering if there's a connection here. Just wondering. President, my God, I hope we haven't used atomic missiles. What does that mean? I have to give the order. I have to give the order. Yeah. He's wondering if was he out of the loop? Advisor number 1. Excuse me, Mr. President. No, we haven't used nuclear missiles to shoot down any flying craft. I think advisor number 4 and the director mean that if we had to shoot one down, for instance, if a group attacked us. President. Is that likely? Advisor number 1. No, I don't think so. President. Can we intercept their radio transmissions? Do we know their language? Advisor number 1. We know or we can recognize their language, which is entirely different than the Ebens. They use a very high-band radio system, but they have different frequencies, and it is difficult for NSA to track them. President. Maybe we should call Captain Kirk. Loud laughter. Oh, a little humor is good in any situation. Advisor number 1. Okay, Mr. President, I'll call Scotty. I love it. President. Yeah, maybe Gene Roddenberry knows it. Knows. Advisor number 1. Our air defenses are as best prepared as we can be against any form of an attack by this group. President. How do we do that? I mean, our pilots, do they know? Advisor number 1. Not exactly. But we have a system to cover any threat. President. A war plan? Advisor number 1. Like I said earlier, yes, Mr. President, we do have war plans just for this event or possible event, President. Okay, well, I think that is enough for one day. Bill, set something up tomorrow to finish this. Casey. Okay, Mr. President, I'll get with advisor number 2 and Michael Deaver. President. I want to thank everyone for a very thorough briefing. I was educated beyond belief. I will have a different attitude every time I look up into the sky. And that's the end. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's probably the most revealing document I have ever read that's been leaked. And I think it's real. I'm convinced of that. Hope you are too. When I said earlier that it looks like we may have advanced beyond our understanding a little bit, it looks like we have, because we are now attributing abductions to the Greys and not really anyone else. But also they talked about space tunnels, and that was an ancient term. I think the term now would be, they actually talked about two different things. They talked about a possible Stargate system, which they found on their maps. Let me just pause for a moment as my computers are doing the wrong thing on certain screens. Okay. And so there's a potential Stargate system, which, the rumor has been floating around for years that Stargate was actually based on real stuff. And I think that this document really corroborates that idea, that there probably are Stargates. But the other form of propulsion, which I think the Greys are using, is the antimatter reaction, bending space-time with gravity amplifiers. And in those cases, you don't need a tunnel or a Stargate. You just need power, and they have it. So there are different types of ships, and this is why it's possible that the Eben ships were like the least advanced, and they were the most friendly. And their technology, just from listening to, it just happened again. Pause again. Okay, and let's see. So, on the propulsion systems, I was thinking that there is my hopes and dreams for the best possible outcome here would be that we reverse engineer their technology, share it with the world, and a lot of people are pushing back against that idea because they keep saying, "Oh, we don't want our enemies to have this. I mean, they could make a bomb and blow us all to hell." Yeah, we've got to get past that type of thinking, or we're never going to get anywhere. We by relieving the scarcity in the world, by having technology that makes abundance the norm everywhere on the globe, no one's in poverty, then we wouldn't have all this fucking fighting that we're so gung-ho to do. We wouldn't have a desire to take over the world because the world would be looked upon as just one family of man. There would never be any wars or fights over resources or ideologies, because all of that will change and we'll all get into the right frame of mind to be ready to graduate into the galactic community. That's my goal. How is that possible? Well, I've talked about it before, so I'm not going to go into depth. Free energy alone, if we can reverse that energy technology, It's either going to be, there's a lot of cynics on Twitter that say, oh, as soon as they figure it out, they're going to use it for their weapons of war. Well, that's what they're doing now. That's what they're trying to do. We need, as a people, to expose that and make our own fucking decision instead of them assholes, because they've caused a loss of 90 years of scientific progress that we could have made. We could have made this world a utopia by now. But because of their desire to continue being war pigs, with the misguided notion that the United States ideology is the only one that really is good for people, and that every other governmental system out there is evil and needs to be changed and made into our image. This is hubris, and it came from having the atomic bomb first. And they still have this mentality. They want to get that second version of the atomic bomb, which is this technology, and use it for world domination. And if you think for 1 second that that would be good for the world, you've got another thing coming. Because what that's going to result in is absolute power for one of the most corrupt countries on the planet, which is the United States. I love this country. I love the people. And I hate the Department of Defense. They need to go down. They need to end this bullshit. And they're not going to. So we have to do it for them. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm still okay. I'm still happy. I'm just pissed. But I know a lot of you are too. The world's a really shitty place right now. So if you're still working, you have to get up every day and face the music. I want you to hear these words. In the great words of Jennifer Stone, go easy. And if you can't go easy, go as easy as you can. This has been Larry Gurnt, and I will see you next time.